I feel so privileged to be a part of what God is doing through only one of many spiritual communities in Ottawa. There are so many awesome churches in Ottawa, right? So many incredible places, and I just so feel honored to be a part of this, be a part of the leadership here, and my wife and I talk about it. It comes with victories, and it comes with sometimes feelings of defeat, but ultimately we know that we have the victory to keep on moving forward, right? And so we're so thankful. And there was a couple years ago, we met this young woman, and my wife actually discerned it first. She said, man, she's going to be a key player in what we're called to do. And I didn't really know who she was, and whenever I hear that, I kind of like to see, test. I like to test, I like to see how things go. Because really, we care about the heart, right? You can have all the skill in the world, you can have all the gifts in the world, but if you don't have the right heart, then it's really hard to work with. You can always teach skill. You can always teach on the gifts, but a heart takes a little bit longer to work with. And so, but instantaneously, my wife and I fell in love with this individual and brought her in, and now she's a huge part of all that we do here on our core team. She leads the VIP services, and her name is Tanya Oakes, and she's going to be sharing with you this morning and teaching and talking and sharing her heart. It's going to be awesome. So why don't you give a big welcome to your own Tanya Oakes. She's not a guest, she's one of the family, and so it's going to be awesome. Welcome. And look at you, even has paper notes. I haven't seen this for a very long time. God bless you. It's going to be awesome.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for that. It's such an honor to be a part of what God is doing here, and it's such an honor to be here speaking with you guys. Most of you know me in the context of doing your morning announcements, right? I get up here, interrupt your worship, and I have about 4 minutes to give you all of this information, and you guys are always so welcoming and attentive, and also, of course, leading VIP services. I also work here in Ottawa. I work in the hospitality industry. I work in sales, representing 2 hotels, so love what I get to do in the business community, that I get to build relationship and network in the business community, but also feel like I get to do the same thing here at church. Love what I get to do here. So obviously this is a great opportunity for you guys to get to know me a little bit more, and I thought, okay, right off the bat, I need to be honest with you guys. I need to confess something, okay? So most of you know me in a friendly context. I'm friendly and welcoming. That's my job, right, at VIP Services. But I need for you guys to know that growing up, I was known as a little bit of a scrapper. I got in a couple of fights. So yeah. So now you know, I beat up a couple of boys. So here's the thing. So it's grade 7, Scott. I didn't get along with Scott. So for some reason, we didn't get along, and we were out in the playground during recess, and we were up on the playground, and the boys were kicking off their shoes from a swing, seeing how far they could get their shoes. It was the great amusement of middle school, of course. Yeah, right? Everybody knows that. So anyways, 2 of these shoes hit me in the head. Now, Scott was not the instigator, but he was there, and he laughed at me, which for some reason justified my taking out my rage on him. So he was getting off of the playground, and I decided to kick him. Now, at the time, I was wearing the platform shoes because they were really popular at the time, and they were foamy. It was foamy, so it's not like it hurt him, but I continued to kick him until he fell off the playground. So now justice was served. Don't worry, guys. Justice was served. I was suspended. The VP couldn't believe that this young girl would beat up this boy. And then afterwards, we became friends in high school, and it was always funny to recount, because he actually grew up to be 6'6" and a jock. So it was always funny to recount the story of how Tanya beat up the 6'6" Scott. Yeah, it was great. It was a great story. So now you know that I am a little bit of a fighter, but God is, don't worry, I'm not an angry person, although I did take a test, a superhero test, and my superhero identity is actually Hulk. So you don't want to see me angry, but I'm not an angry person, I promise. I have, God has worked through my heart, worked through the anger, and yeah, I'm wearing green, and God has redirected that focus, redirected that fight for righteous reasons. And now I would say that I have the fight, and I have fought for love. So that is the name of my message title today, Fight for Love, and my subtitle is The Struggle is Real. The struggle is real, right? The struggle is real. And Jesus, he speaks a lot about love, and in John 15:12-13, he says this. He says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. Now, you can read that and just kind of be like, okay, yeah, lay down my life for my friends, check, got it, moving on. It's an easy verse to just kind of read over, but when you actually stop and think about it, when you think about what does laying down my life look like, that sounds like dying. Oh, does that not? Laying down your life sounds like you're dying. It sounds like it's kind of a bit of a painful process, right? And I would say naturally, we wouldn't be inclined to run towards a deadly situation. If anything, we want to avoid it. So I would say there's probably a little bit of a struggle in that process of laying down your life. If somebody were to say, oh yeah, laying down my life for my friends, I do that all the time, easy. I would say they're probably not doing it right, because laying down your life for your friends sounds like there is a major struggle that goes on there, and maybe even a fight, an internal fight that goes on in this struggle, right? So I want to talk to you about my journey, my struggles that I have faced, but the struggles that I have encountered that I have realized are worth digging your heels in for. They are worth the fight for the sake of laying down your life. So here we go. So a lot of you know this, but I think most of you do not, that when I was 22, I was married. So I'm going to pause for a second, because I realize that I look young. And so some of you might be distracted trying to do the math in your head, asking like, wait, when was that? Did I miss that? Was that last year? So this was 8 years ago. So I'm 29 going on 30, and so it was 8 years ago I was married. And 9 short months later, I discovered that, my marriage fell apart, and I discovered that my husband had been seeing somebody else for the last couple of months of our marriage. So in this journey, in this situation, I encountered the struggle when it hurts. The struggle when you're laying down your life for love when it hurts. So that's my first point, and as Pastor Sean would say, if you're taking notes, write this one down. There is a struggle when it hurts. Because, when it hurts, your natural instinct is to run away, right? To go in the opposite direction, right? Because it hurts. You want to get away from pain. So that was my immediate reaction. I found out and I said, okay, God, I'm out. I'm done. And you know what? I have biblical rights. Matthew 5 says that divorce is permissible if adultery is involved. So that's my ticket out. God, I'm done. But actually funny, because going to that verse, I read it, and what I thought would justify me leaving actually made me want to stay, and actually made me want to try and work things out. But as the story unfolded, things got worse in the sense that more details came out that weren't openly shared. So it was obvious, despite counseling, that things weren't getting better. So we were living in Ontario at the time, and so I decided to go back to my home province, to go back to my family in New Brunswick. But I told him, listen, I want to work through things. I don't want a divorce. I just need to know that, you're heading towards the same direction, at least heading towards reconciliation, so we can go in the same direction here. So just a quick aside, though, I do need to mention that with this situation, with adultery involved, I knew that I had a choice. I didn't feel like God was forcing me to work through this. And I think that's important to note because, going through it, and if you are facing it, or if you know of somebody that's facing it, it's trying mentally, emotionally, physically. And so I knew that God was giving me the grace, and I knew that I had a choice, and I had healthy community around me to help me have healthy boundaries, right? And I wasn't willing to just go back on a dime. It was, there had to be evidence that things were getting better, right? So that's just a quick aside, just in case, you know of somebody or you yourself are going through it. It's not a black and white situation. But so I moved back to Moncton, and I had this timeline because, the struggle for me was the idea, keeping open to working through things. And just that idea alone was a painful thought. And so that was my struggle. And so I gave God this timeline. I said, okay, God, you've got 5-6 months. This is the date. And I will wait until this time. And this, and this, and this. He needs to do this, and this. And then I'll reconsider. So this is what you have to work with. Okay, go. And, we got to that point, we got to that timeline, and it was like this new wave of grace hit me. And suddenly I wanted to work out more. Like I wanted to wait longer. I wanted to see, and I noticed actually where I was being stubborn and where I was, maybe making it more difficult for him. And I wanted to fight harder. And, I just wanted to know that I did everything to fight for love, to fight for reconciliation. And, there was several moments like this, but there was one night in particular, I was brushing my teeth. I brush my teeth every night, but this particular night I was brushing my teeth, and you know how when you brush your teeth, your thoughts just kind of go off. You don't really, don't have any barriers. And I was just thinking about this idea of staying open to working through this, and I had a little bit of a meltdown. And I collapsed over my sink, dramatic, maybe a little bit of toothpaste foam coming out of my mouth. And I just cried out to God. I said, God, I don't know if I can do this. God, this hurts. Lord, what if he's still lying to me? God, what if he's still cheating on me? Lord, there's no guarantee that even if we do get back together, what if he cheats on me again? God, there's no guarantee in this. That's the relationship. There's no guarantee. God, I can't do this. It hurts. But God, not my will, God, but your will be done in this situation. And I knew that in that moment, and there were several moments along the way of that struggle, that I was letting God into the situation. I was letting God in, and I was letting God in to work through the situation. I was letting God in to heal me, and I was letting God in to protect me in this situation. I could trust him. Maybe I couldn't trust my husband. I could trust God, and it wasn't about, me being a martyr, like, oh God, this hurts, but it's your will. That's not what it was about. It was about trusting God in that situation. I knew that God would protect my heart, and he would reconcile the situation however way he sees fit. So I waited for 2.5 years, and most of you know me, and you know I'm not married, so it did end in divorce. So I stand before you supposedly empty-handed, but I can say that it was worth the fight. It was worth the struggle of the hurt. It was worth it. If I could go back, I would fight harder. And if I could go back, I would still marry that man. He was a good man. He loved me so well, and he loved God. He loved the people around him. And when he married me, he had no intentions of hurting me. That was the last thing that he wanted to do. And I think I can, stand here in this room and look around and say, there is not one person, not one of us that has not been hurt by relationship, right? All of us have experienced hurt, whether it's in marriage, whether it's in friendships, whether it's in family, mom, dad, maybe your sister, your brother. It seems that the people that we let in the closest are the ones that are able to hurt us the most, right? But that doesn't mean we close off our hearts. That doesn't mean that we try to avoid relationships. And it means that, actually when we let God into the equation, he's able to heal us. And he's able to make us whole. And Jesus, in the context of saying John 15:13, no greater love is there than this, that someone lay down his life. The context of that was actually at the Last Supper. So this is right before the cross. In a matter of a few hours, he was foreshadowing what he would do. So he said he had no problem saying lay down your life, because he knew that he would do the same thing. And he would trust God through the agony of the garden. He would trust God through the hurt of the lashes. He would trust God through the cross, through his death. He knew that God would resurrect him, that God would raise him up from the dead, defying all odds. So he had no trouble asking us to lay down our lives, because he knew that he would be the first one to do that. And in that feat of resurrecting, raising up from the dead, he would restore our relationship with God, and he would restore our relationship with each other, so that now we can have full relationship. We can get out of a situation where we're hurt by relationship, but we're unscathed. We're still whole. God heals us, right? And he showed us if there's anything in life that is worth getting bruised up over, it's love. If there's, and God showed us, Jesus showed us just that it is worth the fight. And his resurrecting power, it says in Romans that the power that raised Christ from the dead lives in us. So surely, when we're loving and when we hurt, the power of the resurrected King lives inside of us. So now we can have that power available to us to forgive. We can harness the power of forgiveness, and we can harness the power of God's healing in our lives so that we can love, so that we don't have to run away from pain.
So good, so good.
So, it seems that in love, there's no, if there's anything in this life worth fighting for, it's love, right? And for me, I wanted to make, and I still want, my prayer is that I learn how to love in every aspect of my life. Whether that's in family, whether that's in friendship, whether that's in the church, whether that's in my work, whether that's in my community. My prayer is always, God, teach me how to love. But I learned that no matter what the context, it's always vulnerable. And I remember God kind of illustrating this through learning how to network in the context of work. So networking in my life was going to events where I knew nobody and approaching people and introducing myself. And there was always an opportunity for awkward conversation. There was always an opportunity for rejection. There was always an opportunity that we weren't going to quite get along. And it was vulnerable. And I found, and even to this day, no matter how many times I go to networking events, no matter how many times I have to introduce myself, and I do it here too, right? No matter how many times, it's always vulnerable. There's always this aspect of vulnerability in relationship. And so that's the second struggle that I discovered in relationship, the struggle when you feel vulnerable. And so I was actually happy to see that in the world of research, there is actually a researcher by the name of Brene Brown that found this exact same revelation, that relationship is vulnerable. So Brene Brown did this study. She devoted her life, 6 years of study, to vulnerability. And so she actually decided her study first started with shame. So she collected thousands of pieces of data. She collected, case studies, interviews, and she discovered that there were actually two groups of people. So she divided all of this data, these people, into two groups. So one group was they had a strong sense of belonging. They had a strong sense of knowing that they were worthy of love. And the second group, they felt that they always struggled with that feeling. They always struggled with a sense of belonging. They always struggled with a sense of knowing that they were loved. So she decided to just focus on the people that had a strong sense of belonging. So she focused on them, and she said, what is the common denominator? She found the common denominator was that they embraced vulnerability. Not only did they embrace vulnerability, but they saw it as fundamental and necessary in relationship. They actually saw their vulnerability as beautiful. So you can take that data and you can, interpret it any way you want. But the way I see it is these people that know that they are loved, that have a strong sense of belonging, they can be vulnerable in relationship. They can approach relationship with the risk of being rejected and even be rejected and even experience hurt. But that doesn't change the fact that they're worthy of being loved. That doesn't change their sense of belonging. And that is God's revelation for us, right? That we would know who we are, we would know our true identity in Him, and that we would know that we're loved and that nothing can take away His love from us. So when I was telling my family that I was going to be speaking, my oldest sister said, Tanya, I can't believe it. Like, looking back at you in high school, I would have never guessed that this would have been something that you even wanted to do. Because back in high school, I didn't grow up knowing God. So in high school, I lacked confidence. I did not have a sense of knowing that I belonged. I struggled with self-esteem. I struggled with suicidal thoughts. My friend, even, I remember him comparing me. He compared me to Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Do you guys know who Eeyore is? The donkey? The depressed donkey? Yeah, the one that's like, hey guys, it's raining again. That's who he compared me to. But that's what I was like in high school. I struggled with my sense of knowing who I was. And I had a Christian friend in my senior years of high school, and she asked me, Tanya, why don't you commit your life to God? And I said, no, I don't want to change my lifestyle. I liked going out and partying. I knew that if I became a Christian, I would have to change that. So I said, it's not for me. But during that time, I was looking for hope. I was looking for truth. And so I started going out to a Bible study. And they never talked about heaven and hell in the Bible study. But every time I left this Bible study, I had this strange, reality of heaven and hell. And it bothered me, this question of, where am I going to go when I die? It bothered me to the point where actually I had a dream one night where I was faced God. It was Judgment Day, and God was there, and He was saying, "Yeah, Tanya, your life was pretty good, but you had this option, you had this choice." And it was like He was presenting me with the choice at that moment. You can choose your sin, or you can choose eternal life. The choice is yours. And so in the dream, I contemplated that, and then I woke up terrified because I thought, oh God, how is that even an option? Why would I even think that that's, of course, eternal life. Of course I choose eternal life. So that began my relationship with God. But then a year later, I was involved with a ministry in New Brunswick. And that was where I encountered the love of God. I discovered that God lives today, He moves today, and that He loves me, He loves who I am. I discovered a love that I had been looking for my entire life. I discovered a sense of security. I discovered my sense of self-worth. I discovered a passion for life. I realized God spoke to me, and I realized that my life is valuable. My life is valuable, and I have a reason on this earth. There is a reason why I'm here, and I am here to make a positive change in the world around me, and that is God's truth for all of us, that we are important. The greatest lie that we can believe is that our lives aren't important. God speaks to our value. He has put us here for a reason. We are valuable. And so it was in Him, it was through God that I was able to find this love that I've been looking for, this hope, and through that, my identity, my true identity, because I'm not Eeyore, that's not who I am, but through Him, I was able to find my true identity, and that sin that I've been trying to hold on to, I realized was actually causing me the insecurity, was causing me the death. And true life, even the fleeting pleasures that I found, the true pleasures were in God, and suddenly my life was complete in Him, and I could pursue all my perspective was changed, and there was passion for what I did. There was passion for life. So this is God's reality for us. And when we know our identity, we can be vulnerable in relationship. We can approach situations. We can be rejected no matter what faces us, no matter what lies face us. You're not good enough. You can't do that job. You're not smart enough. None of that changes our identity in God. None of that changes the reality that He loves us, right? That's God's will for us. So Jesus demonstrated this beautifully. He was the ultimate model of it in John 13, 1-5. So this is before He spoke John 15, 13. No greater love is there than this. So John 13, 1-5, it says, it was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for Him to leave this world and go to the Father. Now, having loved His own who were in the world, He loved them to the end. Now the evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew this. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under His power, and He had come from God, and that He was returning from God. He knew who He was. He knew nothing could change that. He knew the guy beside Him, even if he betrayed him, nothing could change who He was, where He was going, and the fact that He was from the Father. And so He got up from the meal. He took off His outer garment, and He wrapped a towel around His waist. After that, He poured water into a basin and began to wash His disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around Him. Jesus, the Son of God, fully man, fully God, is washing His disciples' feet, His disciples' dirty, stinky feet. He knows that in a matter of a few hours, His disciples are going to leave Him in His greatest hour. They are going to abandon Him. He knows that one of His disciples has been stealing from Him and actually has betrayed Him and will betray Him to the point of death. That does not keep Him from loving them, to showing them the full extent of His love, to washing their feet. Jesus showed us the ultimate vulnerability in relationship, and none of that kept Him from loving, because He knew who He was, and He knew none of what was going to happen was going to change that. So relationships are vulnerable. Relationships they're unpredictable, right? They're messy, and sometimes they're really unfair. How many of you like unfair situations? I don't. I hate unfair situations. I'm the youngest of three, so I've got two older sisters, and there's 7.5 years between us. And so I had the house to myself for a bit. So I, at times, suffer not only from youngest child syndrome, but also from only child syndrome. So the words, "this is not fair," come out of my mouth. God hears that from me a lot. And so, I actually, so that was my third point, my third struggle that I faced. I realized that even though I hate unfair situations, I have to sometimes endure unfair situations for the sake of love. That laying down my life in the context of the struggle when it's not fair is important. So the struggle when it's not fair. And right before moving here, I worked for this another hotel, and so my last year of being there, I had this boss, a new manager, and for some reason we couldn't see eye to eye, and I couldn't seem to do anything right, no matter what I did, and she actually demoted me. So I voiced my opinion, "this is not fair," and that just made it worse. So I decided, okay, God, what does love look like in the context of relationship? In the context of work. What does love look like in the context of work? It means to honor. God has put leaders in our life for a reason. We have things to learn from them, so I honored. And so I decided I would be the best coordinator that office ever saw. I would lay down my pride. I would endure this, unfair situation. I would struggle through that for the sake of love. And me and that manager actually ended up getting along really well. We became really good friends. And I would say I learned critical things that were essential for the next season in my career. I would not be here in my career if it wasn't for that woman. And not only that, but she actually ended up promoting me twice after that. And she actually sent me here to Ottawa, where I would meet the contact for the work that I have here. So, I could have run away from the situation. I could have said, "listen, this is unfair, and I'm out, I quit." But, God had a purpose for me in that season. And because I, I fought through that struggle of an unfair situation, I was able to be promoted for the next season. And, sometimes life it doesn't look like the way that we thought they would, right? Things don't turn out the way that we thought. Sometimes situations are unfair. Sometimes relationships are unfair. Sometimes just our perspective is different, but situations can be unfair, and we can cry out, "oh God, this is not fair." But in the context of John 15:13, lay down your life for love, Jesus tells his disciples this, and then the next chapter, actually only a few lines later, he says, "and listen, guys, you're going to be persecuted. Because you're affiliated with me, you're going to be excommunicated from your communities. You are going to die because of your affiliation with me. Things are going to get a little unfair, let me tell you. Just because you lay down your life for love doesn't mean that everything is going to go your way and things are going to look the way that you thought they would." But, it turned out for the better, because from that persecution, the gospel spread. And, sometimes we don't always see from God's perspective. We see the situation that's in front of us, and it seems really unfair. Like maybe, you had this idea of a career, and you had this thought of, okay, this is what I want to do in my life. You went for school for that career, and now you're stuck in a dead-end job, and you're like, "God, this is unfair. God, I thought that this is where I was going, and it doesn't quite look the way that you thought." Or maybe, you got in a relationship and you thought that person was going to be the person that you married, and then suddenly the relationship ended. But, God sees the bigger picture. And although it seems unfair, God sees the bigger picture. And if I'm to be real with you, if I'm to be vulnerable, I would say, I wanted to be married. I wanted to have a family, and things didn't turn out the way that I thought they would. Life doesn't quite look the way that I thought it would, but I can tell you right now that even at this point, and I know God is still writing out my redemption story, I can tell you that it is still a story worth telling. It is still a testimony of God's faithfulness. It is still a testimony of God's enduring love. And I can tell you as well that there's actually something so beautiful about being right in the middle, not knowing things, not looking quite the way that you thought they would, being right in the struggle. Being right in the struggle, you know why? Because it's a great opportunity for faith. And what is faith? What is faith? It's confidence in what we hope for, and it's assurance of what we don't see. Confidence, an expectation for God to move, an expectation. Now, what is expectation? What does expectation look like? It's like, when you're little and it's Christmas Eve and you're waiting for Christmas. You know Christmas is coming. You have a great expectation that good things are just around the corner, or just one night's sleep away. You expect, and God wants us to have that great expectation for Him to move in our situation. And when God said, lay down your life for love, He never said, and I promise you, they will love you back. No, that's not part of the deal. He didn't say that. And he never said, listen, lay down your life and it will never hurt. No, He never said that. And He never said, lay down your life and don't worry, you won't ever have to be vulnerable. You won't ever have to face an unfair situation. Things will always look the way that you thought they would. No, He didn't say that. He didn't say that. But you know what He did promise? He promised that He would heal us. He promised that He would make us whole. And He promised that His love, that He would never leave us. That no matter what faces us, His love, nothing could take away His love. Nothing. No lies, no rejection, no hurt. Nothing can take away His love. And nothing can take away His love. And also, no matter the bad situation, you know what He promised? That He would take what was intended for bad and He would turn it around and He would make it good. And He would give us a story worth telling. Because who wants to hear the story of the family where everything was perfect and then things just got better? The end. No, nobody wants to listen to that story. But the greatest stories are stories where there was struggle, where things didn't turn out the way you thought they would, where hopeless situations came up and you thought there is no way things are going to turn out good. But then God shows up and then things turn around, and you know what? Things look better on this side than they did on this side. God's goodness